everyone, and welcome to another episode of Becoming a Professional, the officially unofficial Beta Alpha Psi alumni podcast. This episode's brought to you by the national chapter of Beta Alpha Psi. If you are a member of Beta Alpha Psi or an alumni, we just want to give a quick plug for you to join the Alumni and Member Network to connect with other alumni and network with our professional partners as well. Quick disclaimer, the opinions expressed in this podcast are our own and may not reflect the opinions of Beta Alpha Psi or our respective employers. So thank you guys so much. We're here with Dalton Lewis and Geraldine Dressler from YPTC, and we appreciate you guys coming on the podcast today.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks so much.
So you guys both work for YPTC, which stands for Your Part-Time Controller. Can you tell us a little bit about what your firm does and how it differs from a typical public accounting firm?
Yeah, I'll take that one. So we are not a typical public accounting firm because we're not a public accounting firm. There's a big buzzword in the industry these days that's called CAS, or Client Accounting Services, or CAS, Client Accounting and Advisory Services, however you want to call it. So we are a CAS only firm, and we only do outsourced accounting and only for nonprofits. So that CAS practice in a typical CPA firm might be a portion of the services that they provide, but we don't do audits and we don't do taxes, and we only work with nonprofits. So that's what makes us a little different. And as far as the work that we do, we work with nonprofits of all shapes and sizes all over the country. We have close to 2,000 nonprofit clients, I think in just about every state. And we do everything from the bookkeeping all the way up to the controller and CFO level services. Most of the work that we do is at that controller and CFO level. And we can bend and shape our services to exactly what an organization needs. It might be more of a long-term arrangement. Like when I was client serving, I had clients for 9 years, 12 years. It could be short-term, it could be project-based. So that's the general overview.
And one thing I would add, just in terms of how unique we are in this industry, we have employed a decentralized hybrid model that has allowed us to reach way more nonprofits than we did previously all across the country. I think typically when you think of a hybrid model, you think of staff going into a company office a couple of times a week. We only have 11 regional offices around the country at this point, but we have staff in 48 out of the 50 states. Our model works such that our staff are at home most of the time, but if we have clients nearby them, we may have them go and work with the clients in person. So it gives us that flexibility while also reserving the right to arrange some in-person work with the clients, which helps maintain good relationships.
Nice. So Geraldine, you said when you were client-facing. So can you tell us a little bit about what you do now?
Yeah, so now I am the Director of Strategic Partnerships, and that means that I am responsible for all of our national partnerships, as well as I work with our market leaders on their local and regional partnerships as well. So for example, the BAP partnership is under my purview. I actually share that with Dalton. But we work with the AICPA, NABA, Alpha. We work with accounting societies, nonprofit alliances all over the country. We work closely with CPA firms and law firms. So it takes on many different shapes. I guess if you had to use two words, it would be business development. But it's not a typical business development position. And I think that what I really enjoy most about this is that I get to talk to people all day long, which I think is really fun. And being a CPA myself and having 20 plus years of experience in the industry, I can come from a place of knowledge when I talk to partners about the work that we do.
Awesome. And then Dalton, what's your role?
So unlike Geraldine, I do not have a finance or accounting background. My background is on the nonprofit side. So I've worked at a college. I've worked on the high school side as a college advisor for students in an underserved public school district. And that's really what brought me to YPTC, is this passion that I have for mission-driven organizations. I'm a recruiter on the talent acquisition team. And specifically, I head up our college partnerships. So as Geraldine mentioned, we do a lot of work together with professional organizations, of course, Beta Alpha Psi, NABA, ALPFA, the IMA, a bunch of organizations that work with college students. And so my work revolves around kind of marketing YPTC and its opportunities to folks through those venues.
We won't hold the lack of CPA credentials against you. Don't worry. Don't worry.
Much appreciated.
So as you guys mentioned, YPTC is one of our Beta Alpha Psi professional partner organizations. And these are firms or companies that subsidize the mid-year meetings, which you guys just attended, and the annual meetings, speak at our events, judge our competitions, which I know you've both participated in, and most importantly, network with our students. So how did you guys both get involved with Beta Alpha Psi, and what's your experience been like?
So I think, correct me if I'm wrong, Geraldine, this is my memory of how we first got involved with Beta Alpha Psi. I was, exploring different avenues to connect with students. This is something that, we hadn't done a lot of previously. And the president and founder of YPTC, Eric Freint, approached me about Beta Alpha Psi and said, hey, this looks like a great organization. I want you to explore potential partnership or collaboration opportunities. Geraldine and I took a look and said, this is amazing. We should have partnered with Beta Alpha Psi a long time ago. And I'll add that for context, YPTC has been growing really, really quickly. And I mean, at least 40% year over year, most years since 2020. So when you combine that rapid growth with the context of the students are the cream of the crop. So it was really an easy choice to make this partnership with Beta Alpha Psi, and I've really enjoyed working with the students.
And I'm a BAP alum. My chapter, unfortunately, does not exist anymore, and BAP 20 plus years ago is not as robust as it is today. I'm just so impressed with not only the quality of students, but also the rigor of what's required of the chapters, which turns the students into people who are going to be ready for the working world. So the experiences that they get, the projects that they work on in their chapters, networking with firms and companies and alum, and really being engaged in their community. These are just skills that are so relevant to the working world. And I'm just so happy to see how far the organization has come.
So I met you guys at one of the mid-year meetings,
Last
year. And I know you guys have just attended the annual meeting last year. You attended a couple of mid-year meetings this year. So what did you think about that experience? You've judged best practices. How'd that go?
Well, I would just kind of piggyback off what Geraldine was saying. I am ceaselessly impressed by Beta Alpha Psi students. As I mentioned earlier, throughout my career, I've worked with college students in various capacities, and there is a tremendous difference between the interactions that I have with Beta Alpha Psi students and with others. They're always friendly, confident, professional, and I would say even more importantly, we're passionate about mission-driven work, right? We're at YPTC. So many Beta Alpha Psi students that I meet are really genuinely excited to make a positive impact with the work that they do, and that is just so refreshing to see.
And service is such a key part of the organization.
Exactly.
So we do have community service hours requirements, and a lot of times that is the focus of chapter operations and best practices as well. So I always thought that was really cool to see.
Yeah. And their public speaking, their organization. I mean, getting up in front of strangers and speaking confidently about a subject matter, that tends to come with years of experience, not something that I would typically have expected of college students. But all of the programming that BAP has in place prepares them for that moment of getting up and delivering an 8-minute best practices competition, cutting off at exactly 8 minutes and not any later, and then being able to take those Q&A questions off the cuff from the judges. So like Dalton said, I am just so impressed. And every time a group goes, I just marvel at how amazing it was and how hard the decision is to be a judge.
Yeah, I do not envy our judges. I have done it before. It is very difficult.
Yeah.
So
it is definitely difficult, but I guess to add to what Geraldine was saying, it's not just impressive to see these really polished professional presentations coming from students who are so busy, but also the initiatives that they're presenting about, the things that they've been doing with their chapters are really exciting. Honestly, when I started working with Beta Alpha Psi, I had no idea what to expect from these best practices competitions. I had never been to anything like that before. And I was kind of shocked
Yeah, I
by
remember
how
talking to you afterwards.
excited I got really excited about what I was hearing. And I think in particular, we were talking about this very recently, but the fact that these students are actively contributing to solving the pipeline problem, going out to high schools and community colleges and spreading the word about what a great opportunity it can be to be in accounting. They're making, again, a real tangible positive impact on the profession.
So I think we had talked a bit before we started recording, but you said that you had heard from some students that they were going out to high schools. Can you speak a little bit more about that?
Yeah, I was really impressed. Our higher ed system across the country is in big cities and small towns, and some of our states have pretty sparse populations and don't have big city centers. So there was one school in particular who would travel for hours by bus to go visit high schools in rural areas where they knew that the students were pretty much getting groomed for careers in agriculture because that was what was nearby, which totally makes sense. But they also saw a huge opportunity to show these students that there was a different path. And the level of coordination and also funding to go take, an hours long bus trip that, they went to a couple of different towns, I should say. And, it was that important to them to get the word out about what a career in accounting could mean and the doors that it could open. I was just really heartened that the work is happening, not just from us at the professional level, but from college students who have already decided and made that commitment that a career in accounting is going to be great for them because they haven't even done it yet, but important enough and great enough that they're going to spend time going to talk to high schoolers and students in community colleges that this could be a path for them too.
Yeah. And I mean, we've talked about the pipeline problem. I think that's a really good way to try to solve that, right? Because I feel like more and more these days, I was one of the rare students that actually came in undecided and had no idea what I wanted to do and just ended up in an accounting class and was like, hey, I think this might be for me. I am not flunking the tests and my roommates seem to hate this and I don't. So, that was kind of my path to public accounting. But so often there are students who go into college and already have their minds made up or at least have whittled it down. And if they've never been exposed to accounting in the first place, then of course that's not on their radar.
And accounting, unfortunately, we don't do a great job of marketing ourselves. We're not a very sexy profession.
We are cool.
We are. We are cool. But I don't think people realize that it's actually the backbone of every single type of business that's out there. And that was really what sold me. I was kind of like you. I wasn't quite sure what I wanted to do. And then I took accounting and I said, oh, I get this. And also I can do this in any company, pretty much anywhere in the world. And I don't think people realize, let's say you want to be an entrepreneur, you want to have your own business. You are so much better suited to do that if you have an accounting background, because you will know how the operations work.
Yeah.
You will know how to write a business plan. You will know the importance of filing taxes on time. There's so many things that you get prepared for in college as an accounting major that set you up completely to hit the ground running from day one after you graduate to do those things that you want to do.
And you're less likely to be taken advantage of. You're less likely to have to give your hard-earned money to someone else, to have to figure out these things for you. You can keep more of it in your own pocket. So yeah, I work at a school, as you guys know, and one thing that we recommend a lot, even to students who aren't necessarily interested in being a CPA, is, at least minor in business, because that gives you so many more opportunities if you do decide that you want to, be a hairstylist and open your own hair salon. That's something that you're going to need to know.
Yeah, absolutely.
So. All right. Well, circling back a little bit to specifically the nonprofit space, what are some of the main differences between working in nonprofit and for-profit accounting?
Okay, I think I have 3 answers for this. The first one is just the nature of the accounting. There's different accounting rules. It's not drastically different from for-profit accounting, but something as basic as revenue recognition. If a nonprofit gets a grant or a donation, they have to recognize that revenue immediately. And the way that plays out, that's really wonky. I was on the board of a nonprofit where our fiscal year end was June 30th. On June 29th, we got a 3-year grant. we had to recognize that revenue in that current year, even though all the expenses were going to get recognized in subsequent years. So the onus becomes in the organization for telling the story of why we had such huge revenues in one year and then huge expenses in another. So that's just one of the examples. Another example is who is using the financial statements or the financial reporting. So in a for-profit company, it could be a big public company and they have SEC reporting and shareholders and things like that. It could be a private company, but there's a board of directors. And typically those users are more savvy. They have an understanding of how businesses work. They understand key performance indicators and metrics and ratios and things like that. So there's a certain sophistication that's expected in the for-profit world of those users that really doesn't exist in nonprofits. So the nonprofit organizations, they have volunteer boards typically. And a lot of people who are on those boards are not financially savvy. A lot of them are stakeholders in the organizations. They might have been service recipients of those organizations. And so for us, it's really important to help our clients tell their stories through the numbers. So we have a whole group that their focus is data visualization. And this is where we can take those numbers and create interactive dashboards with charts and graphs that will help people who might only have a high school education but are on a board of a nonprofit be able to make informed decisions that will impact the strategy and direction, and also be able to help those organizations execute on their mission. Which leads me to my third point, which is what we call accounting with a purpose. So for us and pretty much everybody who works at YPTC, we came to this organization because we wanted to work with mission-driven organizations. For me, and I've now been saying this for all 16 years at YPTC, it was a perfect marriage of my skills in accounting and wanting to give back to my community. And it feels really good to know that the work that I'm doing behind the scenes is directly empowering these organizations to better serve their constituents. I can see a direct correlation between the journal entries, the board reports, the scenario planning, the budget versus actual cash flow forecasting. All of that helps them better execute on their missions. And it feels really good to do that.
I'll leave this question to you two, given that I don't have the finance and accounting. I'm happy to talk about opportunities, in the nonprofit accounting sector and the advantages of working in it. But I think for the technical points.
Fair enough. Yeah, Geraldine, I completely agree. I work at the Milton Hershey School, and my entire family makes fun of me now because I swore up and down I would never be a teacher. Everyone else in my family is a teacher except for me, including my brother now. He's a college professor. And then here I am working at a school, but I work in the accounting side. So I decided that was about as close as I was going to get to the classroom. But it's really cool. I'm driving into my office every day and I see all the students walking to class and I'm like, that's why I'm going to work today. So you do get a lot more fulfillment, I think, from this side of things versus I used to work for mining clients.
Yeah, I think one of the greatest things about accounting, beyond the doors that it opens, is just that behind the scenes view of how an organization works. And previous to YPTC, I spent 8 years at EY on the audit side. And that was the greatest thing for me, to be able to peek behind the curtain and see how things get made. And I think that applies also for the nonprofit side, because I had arts organizations as clients. And I don't think people realize that when you buy a ticket to a theater performance, that ticket is not covering the cost of those actors, of the production fees, of the insurance and the union labor. There's a lot that goes into it that makes me have an even deeper appreciation for the role that nonprofit organizations play and how hard it is to deliver on their services, because funding is a perpetual concern that almost never goes away for so many organizations.
That's awesome. So this one may be better suited to your role, Dalton. Our students are always interested in hearing about careers outside of the traditional audit versus tax debate. I know when I was a student, I got very tired of hearing the exact same pitch over and over again. And we also have alumni and young professionals listening that may be thinking about making career transitions, right? So can you tell us a little bit about the opportunities and advantages of working in nonprofit accounting?
Absolutely. And I think the first point that I always hit on is what Geraldine mentioned, is just how rewarding it can be to work for a mission-driven organization. And, that's not just in terms of personal fulfillment, but, typically when you're at an organization where everybody is really passionate about achieving this same objective, it translates to a much better organizational culture. And it's really hard to put a value on that. There are a lot of jobs out there where you could be making a lot of money, you could be advancing your career, but you might just be miserable. So if you can find a position that is personally fulfilling and at the same time is just a nice place to work and you like the people that you work with, again, hard to put a value on that.
Yeah.
Couple of other points that I like to bring up when I talk about this. I think working at a nonprofit can often provide you with experience that you might not get as an accountant at a for-profit company. So for example, most nonprofits have boards of directors, even smaller organizations, whereas most for-profit companies, especially smaller ones, will not have a board of directors. So as a finance professional at a nonprofit, you can often get the opportunity to work with a board or the executive director of the organization, and that is incredibly important experience to have on your resume. And then in the future could also help lead to board positions of your own. And in general, I think nonprofit accounting is a kind of overlooked and unfortunately often undervalued skill set, but it's always in demand. It's a very specialized skill set. And I think as I'm sure we'll be talking about in a moment, especially right now, given the pipeline problem, it's in higher demand than ever. So it's always something that is going to lead to opportunities.
And I did not have a ton of nonprofit accounting experience before I joined YPTC. I left EY as a senior manager, and I had recently joined the board of directors of a nonprofit, and I was helping them with their QuickBooks. And that was new to me. So I think the great thing about our company is that if you have a solid accounting background, you can learn the nonprofit piece and all the technology that comes with it, with the different accounting systems, fairly easily. So just having that accounting background will position you well, I think, to work with nonprofits too, if that's, if you're open to it.
So who is typically your, I guess, recruitment base? Are you a campus recruiter? Are you looking for experienced hires? Who are you looking to interview?
So at this time, we're hiring accountants for our staff accountant position, which comes with a requirement of a minimum of 3 years of experience. For the controller position, we're looking for more experienced folks, at least 5 to 7 years of progressive accounting experience. But as I mentioned earlier, we are looking towards the future. And so we are hoping to build out some entry-level roles within the next year or two. And obviously, there's one place that we're going to go to before we tell anybody else about it once we do launch those positions. I think we all know the organization I'm talking about.
I think we might be familiar, yes. So as we've discussed, we've all heard about issues with the accounting talent pipeline. So fewer students are majoring in accounting, and those who do seem to be leaving the profession at an increasing rate. And in addition to that, the average age of CPAs is just steadily increasing, right? So we're going to see a ton of CPAs looking to retire in the next 5-10 years. So can you speak to how that's impacted the nonprofit space and any hiring or labor market trends that you guys have been seeing?
Absolutely. And unfortunately, I think the accountant shortage is impacting nonprofit organizations just as much as it is for-profit companies, if not more so.
Yeah, I can attest. Our team has been very short-staffed in the last year.
And this is a familiar story for us at YPTC. It's, one of the reasons that folks come to us for our services. I guess a couple of things I would point out more specifically. A lot of the time, nonprofits will have trouble competing with the compensation that you could expect to receive as an accountant at a large for-profit company. So that makes things more challenging in an environment when everybody is struggling to find accountants. Now, from a kind of labor economics perspective, in 2023, we experienced the lowest national unemployment rate since 1969. So it's not just accounting, it is across many different industries. It's a struggle to find staff.
Yeah.
And maybe I'm hammering the point home too much here, but it's complicated by the fact that, this doesn't just mean that we are seeing staffing shortages in finance offices at nonprofits, but of course, less accountants means less auditors. And audit firms that are experiencing these staffing shortages, they're raising their prices. In some cases, that might mean nonprofits getting priced out of those services. firms might, drop some of their small nonprofit clients, even though nonprofits often have greater audit obligations than for-profit companies. They might have, targeted audits for grants, funders, state charitable registration regulations. So I think that gives you kind of a sense of the depth of the issue here. And I'm going to add one more thing. I'm really, I don't know, I think jazzed up about this because I think a lot of people don't understand the economic impact of nonprofits. These are not just, small organizations with very niche missions. Nonprofits make up almost 6% of our GDP. There are over 1.5 million nonprofits around the country, and that's not even counting religious institutions. And in many cases, these organizations are providing vital public services. They're housing people, they're providing food, clothes, and other vital supplies. Mm-hmm. So we're not just talking about organizations struggling to fulfill their missions. We're talking about a real, tangible economic impact in communities around the country.
That was.
I don't know how else to add to that one.
Sums it up well. I was going to add.
This is something I think about a lot.
Oh,
like
yeah.
I said, I get jazzed up about it, but I think it's just a shame. And I think again, folks don't really understand the scale of the problem here.
Yeah. I actually wrote an article about this very subject for the National Council of Nonprofits last year, and even at the end of 2023, they told me it was their #1 viewed article in years because it was a wake-up call for a lot of organizations. Mm-hmm. In some cases, they knew of foundations who just thought that their grantees were delinquent in submitting financial reports and thought that there was something wrong with them, as opposed to really understanding that it was a systemic issue. Mm-hmm. Even municipalities are getting their debt downgraded because they're not getting in financial statements on time. So I think the ramifications are pervasive, especially if it imperils their status as a 501c3 or ability to continue to, secure that funding. Yeah. So this is a story that I think we talk about a lot in the accounting profession, but it's not talked about nearly enough everywhere else because every single type of organization needs an accountant. Mm-hmm.
On the flip side, the silver lining here is that if you're an early career accountant and you want to pursue a career in nonprofit accounting, and I assume this is what we're going to be talking about next, but the opportunities are there and you can start that career and start making an impact really quickly. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So, as a recruiter, do you have any career advice for early career accountants who are interested?
Yeah, absolutely. I think, I'll start off by giving the same piece of advice that I give to students, no matter what kind of job they're looking for, whether or not they're in accounting. Network, reach out, have conversations, and do your research. If you know somebody that works for a nonprofit, talk to them. Talk to your professors. There may be, first of all, universities are almost always nonprofits, so they may be able to give you a unique insight in that regard. But talk to your professors, see if they know folks who do nonprofit accounting. If there are local nonprofits that you're really excited about, you are a big fan of their missions. Mm-hmm. If there are local accounting firms that specialize in working with nonprofits, reach out to them, ask about what kind of opportunities they have, and see what they're looking for. Mm-hmm. And then, perhaps tailor your professional development activities to that. Mm-hmm. Of course, there are certifications, training programs, graduate degrees that focus on nonprofit financial management. So those are going to be really important opportunities to look into as well.
And as far as those resources, the AICPA has a not-for-profit section that is really robust. And I think it's especially relevant for those alum maybe who are looking to make a career change. It's a really great way to get up to speed on, what are the ins and outs of nonprofit accounting in particular, and then also what the issues are. I will add one piece of advice to the advice section of this podcast. When I was in San Diego last week for the BAP mid-year, I was on a panel with other folks who were, I would say, more mid-career, and none of us worked in CPA firms. The topic was diverse horizons and really trying to encourage students to consider what could be their next job. Mm-hmm. And that was something that I don't think was ever communicated to me as an undergrad. Where I went to school at the time, it was Big Five. This is where you're going. This is what you have to aim for. And I wasn't really told that there was other options out there. I don't know if that would have necessarily changed things for me, but I didn't figure out that I wanted to work with nonprofits until I was in my late 20s. And not that it was a barrier to coming to work at YPTC, but I might have asked to be on more nonprofit audit clients when I was at EY if I knew that that was going to be my path. So the advice was to think, with your future self hat on, to think about, where do you see yourself in 5, 10, 15 years? Do you want to be a digital nomad and just work hybrid and travel all over the world? Do you want a big house in the suburbs with lots of kids? Where do you see yourself, not just from a career perspective, but from a quality of life perspective? And think about what stepping stones you need to walk on in the interim to get there. And your first job out of college, you'll have plenty of opportunities to start thinking about that, because you can ask to be on certain types of clients and certain types of practices, work with certain types of people or populations. So the world is your oyster. And I don't think that could be said of too many other majors outside of accounting.
I totally agree. Yeah. And quick, BAP plug. I mean, I was an alumni rep for the Southeast region. So I helped to plan our, at the time, regional meeting for the whole Southeast. We have 73 chapters. And then I actually was an international rep and served on the Beta Alpha Psi board of directors. So that is part of the reason that I became interested in the nonprofit space, because BAP is a nonprofit. Yep. And I don't know of many other 25-year-olds that have the opportunity to serve on the board of directors of a nonprofit, but that was a really unique experience, especially because most of the other board members are deans of business schools. They're, talent recruiters for huge firms. And then here's me, who's a staff accountant at EY at the time, and was like, I'm an alumni, but at the same time, we do have some very relevant experience because we are the closest in age to our stakeholders who are the students. So it's given me a lot of unique opportunities to chair the annual meeting in Orlando this July, which I'm very excited about and hope to see you both there.
Yes, we will. For sure.
But this organization has opened a lot of doors, and that was one that I never saw coming. So if any of you listening are interested in possibly entering the nonprofit space, would definitely recommend checking out our alumni representative roles. But
I think that's a great suggestion. And Dalton touched on this earlier, but the idea of just serving on a nonprofit board in general, I think, is really important. And that was something that no one ever told me when I was 25, that you can do this. And I co-founded a nonprofit. I chair that same nonprofit. I'm the treasurer of another one. We're always looking for younger people because we're realizing that, the term diversity includes age too. We need people of all ages to have their viewpoints heard on boards. So don't think just because you're 24 years old that you are not needed or wanted on a nonprofit board. I think there's a lot that young people can contribute from their ideas and opinions. But to your point, Mackenzie, it's built-in networking. You're going to get access to people who are much more advanced in their careers. And I like to use the term personal board of directors. So I like to collect people along the way. And I have a large collection of people that I look to for support and advice and mentorship. And that's a great space to find those exact people in.
Yeah. Well, thank you guys so much for joining us on this episode. Where can the people find you on social media?
I'm on LinkedIn, Geraldine Dressler. There's actually 2 Geraldine Dresslers, but the other one is blonde, and I think
so you'll know.
I think from Canada. So yeah, I think if you just look at the picture, it'll be pretty obvious. Yep.
I'm also on LinkedIn, Dalton Lewis. I don't know how many other Dalton Lewises there are on LinkedIn. I'm sure there's a couple, but
if you add YPTC in there, we'll probably find you.
I'm the one. I'm the only Dalton Lewis that works at YPTC. I mean, I'm a recruiter, so I practically live in LinkedIn. But really, please do reach out. Add me on LinkedIn. I'm always happy to chat. And if your Beta Alpha Psi chapter needs somebody to come and give a talk about opportunities in nonprofit accounting, professional development, job search prep, whatever the case may be, I'm always happy to talk about that as well.
Yeah. Right. And follow your part-time controller on LinkedIn. We have a lot of great content out there. Also on our website, we do a free monthly webinar that will get CPE. So even if you're just curious and what does it mean to do nonprofit accounting, that's a great place to start.
Awesome. Well, thanks so much, and we'll see you on the next episode of Becoming a Professional. This episode was hosted by Mackenzie Gravett with special guests Geraldine Dressler and Dalton Lewis from YPTC. Special thanks to Philly Podcast Space for recording and editing this video, and to Riley Ramos, who prepped and distributed the final cut. Music was sourced from Resolute Audio and Fine Tune Media on Adobe Stock. Thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you on the next episode of Becoming a Professional.